This is not meant as a substitute for legal counseling. Here, it's only meant as guidance. Okay, here's a common myth here is that, and you hear this all the time. If you go on the internet, and I don't know about you guys, I get this all the time. Go, I want to get into a special needs trust, Mr. Dale. Here, I may talk them out of it, but I want to get in a special needs trust. But I've read everywhere that you can't use it for food and shelter. Well, that's absolutely not true. Okay, in reality, a pooled trust, any special needs trust, can be used for food and shelter, but first you have to follow 3 steps. You'll notice I like breaking things into steps. It works for me. Step 1 is find out exactly what benefits the beneficiary is receiving. Yeah, how many of you have had beneficiary come in, very competent people, you ask them, what are you getting? And they say Social Security. Well, first off, SSI is not Social Security. So, I've had too many times where I go charging off, assuming that they're on SSI, and then I find out later they're on Social Security and it's a needs-based benefits. Okay, first off, find out what they're getting. Second, evaluate the consequences on the distribution on the benefits. And the third is reporting to the proper agency. And one of the things we're working on the website is there will be some downloadable reporting letters the beneficiaries can download and they can turn themselves into Social Security. I have a feeling they won't. So, in most cases, maintaining eligibility for Medi-Cal and in-home support services is of the highest priority here. And so the first question you have to analyze is whether these benefits are based on SSI or Medi-Cal rules alone. Okay, so as we all know, and if we don't, what you should know is that one of the most common ways of getting qualified for Medi-Cal is to get at least $1 of SSI. It's called categorical eligibility. And basically what that is if you get $1 of SSI, you don't have to do anything further. You automatically get Medi-Cal. You don't have to prove you're disabled here. Medi-Cal eligibility can also be maintained independently. Okay, and in the second portion of this, we'll go through the Medi-Cal stuff. If Medi-Cal is based on SSI, payment of food and shelter from a trust account will reduce the beneficiary's SSI dollar for dollar, capped at what Social Security Administration calls the presumed maximum value. In 2009, and I'll tell you, I go through this every year except this year, the number changes slightly, and it usually takes me about 3 months to get the number right here. This year, because we didn't have inflation, or we didn't have a cost of living adjustment, it's still $244.66. Now, in some cases, the loss of that $244.66 is a minor nuisance, okay? And in some cases, it can be devastating, okay? So everybody wants to keep as much as you can. One of the things I have noticed that for many of our beneficiaries who are getting their Medi-Cal based on SSI, once they take that PMV hit, then we can feed them, they can shelter them. We just, we don't have to pay attention to a lot of things, And in fact, if you've ever gone through a review with somebody on their SSI, because depending on the region you're in, you get a quarterly questionnaire about how was the money spent, and people go, well, how should I answer this, and why are they asking? The reason they're asking is they're trying to find out, are you paying for your food or shelter, or is somebody else paying for it? That's what they're looking for. Once you take that reduction, then actually it makes trust administration much easier. We actually categorize people into 2 categories. We categorize them into folks who already had the SSI reduction. So when a request comes in, we had a request come in which we're having some difficulty with right now with somebody who hasn't got an ISM reduction and wants us to pay a $100 water bill. And we keep going, we don't think it's a good idea for us to pay your $100 water bill because it's going to reduce your benefits by $80. And I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense here. So we have a list of folks who have taken the ISM reduction, and she's in one of those categories where she hasn't. And then we have a list of folks who have taken the ISM reduction, and at that point, they want us to pay the water bill. Not a problem. There's not even a second thing we need to think about it beyond my utilizing my discretion to say, pay the darn water bill and let's move on. So now, we had a test this morning, and I think Carol, who did a marvelous job. Oh, I know when she missed. She missed the mortgage. I think she got most of the ISM things. I've never been able to commit this to memory, but there are only 10 things that are ISM. So it is food, mortgage, property taxes, rent, heating fuel, gas, electricity, water, sewage, garbage removal. That's it. Okay? There's nothing in there about improvements to the house, maintenance to the house. There's nothing in there about internet, telephone, whatever. So one of the things, if we're looking at not taking an ISM reduction here when you're counseling folks, is if the trust pays for the telephone bill, the internet, as many things as possible so they have enough money to pay for these things, then they won't take the reduction. Now for many people, I know in Walnut Creek, my guess is probably in Palo Alto or Menlo Park, trying to pay for your food and shelter for $845 a month, soon to be $830 here, is a challenge. And for some folks it's just not possible here, but some folks do amazingly well. So here's an example where rent might be advisable. Jane receives $845 a month of SSI. She asked Bob, her beneficiary advocate, to have the Golden State Pool Trust pay her rent, or authorize the payment of rent, to the tune of $1,200 a month, which would be somewhat challenging to do it anyway for $845 a month. Jane understands that her benefits will be reduced by $244.66, but she feels that the benefit of living in a decent apartment outweighs the reduction of her SSI. Bob submits the distribution request with a signed acknowledgement from Jane that she understands there will be a reduction in her benefits and that she is responsible to report to the Social Security Administration that the Golden State Pool Trust account is paying her landlord directly. Now, by the way, this will be true whether it's Wells Fargo or private professional fiduciary. It's the same thing. It's not like we've got special rules here. Okay? Sort of makes sense. What you're leveraging is living in a decent place. And in the end, even if she got some crummy little place that she could afford, by the time she's done paying for that and all her other things, she'd be lucky if she has any spending money at all. So I would advocate in a lot of ways by doing this, if there's funds in the trust to do it, she will have more spending money. And it's nice to have some spending money in your pocket to do the things you want without having to ask Shelley, is it okay? As pleasant as Shelley is. Okay, Jane, although I've got a feeling people call, they just want to talk to Shelley. Maybe I need to get somebody who's not so pleasant. I'll think about that here. Okay, anyway, Jane receives here's one where it may not be advisable. Jane receives $845 a month of SSI. She asked Bob, her beneficiary advocate, to have the Golden State Pool Trust pay her rent for $250 a month. Well, that's not much of a place. Here's Jane's SSI will be reduced by $244.66, meaning that she's not really getting any benefit out of this. And so that just doesn't make any sense at all. In that case, just go ahead and pay it. That's really the same situation as the gal we have who wants to pay the $100 watering bill. And here's the other thing that comes up. We are not the SSI police. We do not. We make a report when somebody joins the trust. If the attorney doesn't do it, the referring attorney doesn't do it, to Social Security or Medi-Cal, whatever the proper agency is, when you join the trust. And past that, we're not turning you in. That's the responsibility of the beneficiary. So we would not contact Social Security, but really, you need to encourage them to report what they're supposed to report. Here's an example where it eliminates the SSI. Okay, so Jane receives $800 a month of Social Security disability, which is unearned income. Okay, so unearned income includes money from other programs. okay, and $65 of SSI. And the reason she's getting $865 instead of $845 is with the $800, there's a $20 disregard, okay? She asked Bob, her beneficiary advocate, to have the Golden State Pool Trust pay her rent of $1,200 a month. Payment of the rent is gonna wipe out the SSI, but she'll still get to keep her Social Security disability insurance. And by the way, the Medicare that goes with it, okay? Bob and Jane might elect to have the rent paid out of her account, but she needs to maintain her eligibility without her SSI. And so note in this example, if Jane elects to lose her SSI and maintain the Medi-Cal independently, she will need to apply to her local county Medi-Cal office. Okay, she still is disabled, and the definition of disability for Medi-Cal is exactly the same as SSI. She doesn't have to prove that, but what she'll have to do is go down and apply for Medi-Cal independently. And in this case, keep this in mind as we go through this. Her countable income, what we're going to want to do is to try to have her on the aged and disabled program, but we'll get into that more in the next set of scenarios. You folks with me so far? So wiping out the SSI is not necessarily the end of the world. The problem that we have sometimes is a lot of these folks have mobility issues and that sort of thing, and somebody needs to get down to that Medi-Cal office and get that application filed. If we can't do anything else, here, my office actually doesn't do Medi-Cal applications. Anybody in this office do them, or do you? Doris does, but yeah, we don't. So we would have somebody either go through the Independent Living Resource Center, or we have some other care managers that will help them fill it out. They won't actually file it for them. Now, types of Medi-Cal, as we're doing this, is we have the aged and disabled program, which, and I'm going to go through this very quickly because the next set of scenarios is going to get into this in more detail. The 250 program, which we've talked about, sure cost Medi-Cal here, and what we call the joker in the deck, which is the Medi-Cal waiver program, which we are definitely not going through Medi-Cal waiver programs because I think there's something like 40 of them. I don't know what it is, and every one's different. So the most common Medi-Cal waiver program is either institutional deeming or the developmental disabilities waiver. And just for purposes of this, what that is for the institutional deeming, it allows somebody, a child under the age of 18, to get full scope Medi-Cal and waive all the deeming rules from parent to child here, so the regional center can get paid. So if you ever have, and most of you folks know what a regional center is, or okay. For the tape, a regional center is for folks with developmentally disabled disabilities. By the way, there's something we'll go through later that uses the R word. Social Security used the R word. I didn't use the R word here, but what you might normally call mental retardation here. And what that is, it's a nonprofit organization. There's 21 of them. Every one is really different here, especially Orange County. They're very different here. But they're basically the trough of all the services, residential services for folks with developmental disabilities under the chopping block. And many of their programs for children are based on a waiver program.